It's time to have a real discussion about how to move education and training from a brick and mortar location in Newport, Rhode Island to the virtual world. Good morning. My name is Joel Huval, and this is my senior project for Technology Leadership and Management, uh, the senior project for this degree program through Roger Williams University. What I'm going to cover today is basically the introduction into my project, talk about the background and significance of not only the project itself, but the background and significance of what this project could lead to in the future. I took an applied approach to this project. I'm also going to talk about some of the procedures that I performed in order to get my information, compile my data, any amount of research that I was able to do to make sure I have the best project going forward. I'm going to share with you the results of my survey data, share with you the results of my interviews with key stakeholders, fleet leadership, and some of the other folks that I talked to make this project actually come together. And lastly, I'm going to provide my recommendations for what I see is the most logical approach to the way ahead here as far as naval education. So let me give a brief intro here as to what I'm going to talk about. The SCA is the only Navy enlisted education in the fleet. It's all we offer at the senior enlisted level. The students that are in the Senior Enlisted Academy are, on average, 17 and a half years into the Navy. So they're already on their fourth or fifth enlistment contract at this point, some of them. And they're going through because it's mandatory to make Master Chief now. What the school was, which I'll talk about later, and what the school is are two totally different things today. And I want to be able to, later on in this project, when I give my recommendations, talk about the consideration for availability of this education opportunity at junior supervisory ranks to ensure that we're actually cultivating the most professional and well-educated system of sailors that we possibly can. And I'd also like to introduce in my recommendations later on in this project the ability to apply this new system that I'm proposing as a force-shaping tool. In other words, make sure that we are promoting quality over quantity. So let me talk about the background and significance of the Senior Enlisted Academy, how it was. So in 1980, when the school became an educational opportunity for senior enlisted leaders to move on to command enlisted senior positions. So admirals' aides, command master chiefs. At the time, there was Chief of Naval Operation directed command level leadership for enlisted sailors. And the Senior Enlisted Academy was a catapult to get them to these positions. It was voluntary. When it first started, it was 12 weeks long. It was since pared down to 9 weeks long, and then again pared down to 6 weeks long in residence. And then this all changed in 2016. So let me talk about how it is. Up until 2016, the system provided seating for 112 students to come through each class. And classes ran about 5 or 6 a year. So you can do the math. How it is that now we are dealing with class sizes up to 162 students per class. And is no longer voluntary. Senior chiefs have to have this in their service record in order to be promotable to Master Chief. So it's a force-shaping tool in that regard, but all the way at the end state of the leadership spectrum. So what it was a voluntary school that provided education in budget and manpower and things that would be more directed at the executive level of leadership to be able to provide guidance to flag level leadership, admirals, combat commanders. Be able to say, hey, look, this is our budget, this is what we're able to afford, this is our manning, this is what we need to do to either increase our manning. These are my recommendations in order to move ahead as far as what we need logistically. So what it is is now critical strategic thinking. In other words, why is the Navy out doing circles and boxes with their ships off the coast of China? Why are we worried about the Spratly Islands? Why are we worried about an India-Pakistan war? Why are we concerned with Russia and Ukraine? What is going on with Africa? What needs to happen there? Why are we studying all these things? And then we also get into leadership education, human behavior in the organization, management issues, how to deal with conflict and controversy. We get into a lot of human behavior studies, case studies that involve making sure that we're making the best decisions possible for commands at the not at the echelon of flag level, but at the commanding officer level. So in other words, unit level leadership. So that's the senior enlisted side of the house. So now let's talk about what happened, background significance for the young supervisors at the second class petty officer up to the chief petty officer level of leadership. There was a Navy leadership continuum school that junior supervisors had to attend in order to be promotable. These were brick and mortar schoolhouses. One was located in Japan. There was one in San Diego, one in Norfolk, and there was one in Europe, I think in Italy. They shuttered these schools due to budget, basically, years ago. And what they did was they put the onus on previous instructors to manage these courses at the unit level. And there's no real oversight as to how this is happening. It's documented that people are giving the training, and it's documented that people are receiving the training. But there's no real oversight to say that, was this completed? Was this just pencil whipped? There's no real concrete way to prove that it's actually being done correctly or incorrectly. But we don't know. Whereas the Senior Enlisted Academy has a 72-hour mandatory online course that generates a certificate with the U.S. Navy War College that says this person completed this. It goes into their permanent record to say that this is a completed prerequisite that's required for the Senior Enlisted Academy. Once they're at the Senior Enlisted Academy, obviously there's proof that they're here. And they leave with an actual graduation diploma. So I'd like to talk about some of the procedures that I performed to come up with the basis for my recommendation. So I sent out a lot of surveys. I think 6 or 7 surveys, and I'll provide that data briefly in an upcoming slide. But I wanted to look at the budget. And what I found out about the budget was that the average cost of a sailor coming through, a senior chief coming through the Senior Enlisted Academy is about $4,000 per student for 3 weeks in-house. And I wanted to see what the cost would be budget-wise if we put this all online, which is one of my recommendations. So I reached out to the stakeholders, people that are involved in travel, people that are involved in budgeting, people that are involved in contracting, people that are involved in copyright, all the stuff that we incorporate into our curriculum to make sure that we're giving the best training possible. So I talked to stakeholders, educators, and leaders in the fleet, people that have leaders that have been through the course themselves and what they think it did for their career, leaders who have had their subordinates come through the school and how they feel that those subordinates gained from the school, and also from leaders who have never been but are in leadership positions and that they feel that going through the school would even benefit them. So I reached out to several different levels here and several different layers to see what it is about the Senior Enlisted Academy that's vital to the fleet, first of all. And if this education is vital to the fleet, is it vital to also provide this leadership training and education to mid-level and junior supervisors? So let me talk about the results. And I got to be honest, I'm not really happy with how the results came about. 100% of my returns said they did not want to see this leadership school become an entirely online endeavor. Going through all the numbers with the math is just not economically feasible, especially in today's economic environment, to allow for brick and mortar schools to be reestablished. It's just not economically feasible. But They all want this education available at junior levels of leadership. So they don't want it in an online environment, but they want all the junior supervisors to get this education. So how do we achieve this? Well, after I get through the slides here showing my survey results and all that, I'll get into my recommendations for the way ahead here. And I think my way ahead is not only viable, I think it's also economically sound. I think that it has a lean approach to it, and I think it really is a force shaping tool. So here's my recommendations. A phased in approach. What do I mean by a phased in approach? That phased in approach would mean, for the meantime, people would have to qualify to get into the schools. So if we're dealing with a second class petty officer, that petty officer must also not only be in that rank, but have the recommendation to attend the school, must complete a certain amount of hours of online education prior to receive a certificate that says that they are eligible to get into the school. Once they're eligible to get into the school will be entirely online. There's just no feasible way economically to come back and create brick and mortar schooling, and the travel involved and all the money that goes into that is just not going to happen. So that phased-in approach will involve virtual reality. Virtual reality education, I think, is the way ahead here. It costs $100 for a virtual reality headset. So the main reason the people wanted brick and mortar schools brought back was the interaction. That's what senior leaders love about the Senior Enlisted Academy. They get to come back for 3 weeks and actually interact and go exercise, go play volleyball, whatever, on their off hours, go out to to the clubs in Newport and enjoy certainly what Newport offers as far as nightlife and that kind of stuff. They want to experience all that socially. They're not going to be able to do that online. But that's not really what it's all about. Is there a good social aspect to this education as it is now? Absolutely. But is that really the reason that we're doing this? I hope not. We should be thinking strategically and critically and being able to convey what we're learning to junior sailors and junior officers who are going to lead this Navy in the next Great War. And let's be honest, the way the world is shaping right now, the next Great War isn't a if, it's a when. So let's take the social stuff out of it and let's focus on the education here. I think that's far more important. I think if you want to have a face-to-face interaction with your other students that are going through the school, there is nothing wrong with wearing a virtual headset. There is nothing wrong with interacting real time through this computer. And it makes it really difficult for me to have to justify going through a brick and mortar school at that cost when I have completed my nearing completion here, a few weeks away from completing my entire bachelor's degree through Roger Williams University without having met any of you, to include Dr. Rebello or Mike or Brian. I haven't met any of you. I would like to at some point, but I don't have to. And I'm not saying that to sound mean. Life will go on whether I ever meet you guys or not. That's the cold, callous side of me, I guess. But anyway, I would like to further explore online options and what's available out there as far as education, because it's really about education and about making sure that we are certainly developing the best leadership possible for our Navy. So the last question becomes, who's actually going to facilitate this education? And my recommendation is a grow your own philosophy. So legacy facilitators. So you take a senior chief petty officer who graduated from the Senior Enlisted Academy, and we give that senior chief the opportunity to become part of a team to develop the infrastructure for the second class, first class, and chief petty officer online virtual leadership schools. And as graduates exit those schools and back into the fleet, they're given the opportunity to become online facilitators at their level. So just like how the Navy operates now, an instructor or facilitator is a special duty program, just like myself at the Senior Enlisted Academy. It's a 3-year tour outside of my normal job, which is mass communications. So we take these recent graduates and allow them to grow their own. They have their own legacy at this point. And as they progress through, it becomes a step process. And each time you graduate to the next higher level, you learn more. So we apply the meat and potatoes of our basics, like communication, understanding some of the uh, fundamentals of strategic thinking, critical thinking, and apply that at the second class level. And then at the first class level, we apply a little bit more of what we do at our level now. And what we can do is you build further and further until what happens at the senior chief and master chief levels of this continuum, this leadership continuum, is it becomes a capstone. And the last thing that we'll do is, as senior leaders, is actually develop a real legacy in taking a real world problem and providing a solid recommendation in how to deal with it at the uh, basically chief of staff, joint chiefs of staff level of strategic thinking. We provide our own input into how to make this happen. Some may be better than others, and some may never actually leave the classroom. But it's an opportunity for someone to showcase what it is they've learned over this entire process from the time they were a second class all the way up to Master Chief, and giving us a voice in what we think we can accomplish at the senior leadership level, senior enlisted leadership level. So, in conclusion, basically, I'll just wrap this up. Uh, I gave you an intro, um, talked a lot about the background significance of the education that we provide and what was provided and what is provided, right? Talked about the procedures that I offered, actually, talked about the procedures that I performed uh, to get to where we are today. I shared my results of my surveys and other data with you today, and I provided you with my recommendations for the way ahead here. So with that, I thank you for your time, and I truly hope I didn't scare you with talking about the next Great War. That really was not my intention, but if I got you thinking, then I did my job. Thank you.